Hi Batty, RPG Day 2018, Day 24. Which RPG do you think deserves more recognition? Well, there's a massive list of very innovative RPGs out there, and obviously as the hobby's growing, I hope that a few people that have been introduced via Dungeons and Dragons, maybe Pathfinder or Vampire, will find their ways to the indie market. So instead of making a massive pie chart of indecision, I decided to go with the idea of gamification of knowledge. A game that's doing something different, that's a little bit standing out from the crowd even. Now that category can still apply to quite a few indies out there, so it's a bit unfair that I'm only going to name one. But firstly, a quick honourable shout out to GURPS, partly highlighting this because I've made such great use of those books over the years, both at the local games table, but also when I worked at the old games company. Myself and the boss used them as good ideas to bounce around before we started building our own. As a good example in GURPS is the magic systems. There's so many different ways to do anything. And there's even a GURPS Mage Ascension as well. So you can really have an incredibly mixed group, although obviously that's a pretty brave thing to do if you're a GM trying to keep track of all those different systems. So the one I've chosen is Cryptomancer by Chad Walker. Now it might come across as a simplistic little fantasy game at first if you just looked at the setting, there's elves and dwarves and humans. But what really makes it stand apart is how it uses the sort of gamification of cryptography and the way that the different empires in that game effectively all interact with each other, as well as the mechanics of risk eaters and the actual background setting about them is quite interesting as well. Although there is a variant to run a slightly less Cthulhu Doomsday type version of the risk eaters. Now, when I ran it last year with my group, one of the players happens to know a fair bit about cryptography, and they found no problems with the game. They weren't highlighting any errors, and they said it read well. And two other players who aren't, like myself, really experts at all on cryptography. As a programmer, I know a little bit about the concept, but again, not much. So we picked it up reasonably easy, and that's partly because Chad Walker does such a great way of explaining things as well. So it's a game that does something a little bit different, with an aspect that's radically different, and crucially does relate to real life knowledge. And it's the sort of a thing that I've played around with in the past. I mean, I years ago wanted to do a Street Fighter variation, which was a lot more based around real fighting, but unfortunately that's a very complicated subject and people have a lot of preconceived ideas. So, gamifying knowledge is a lot harder than we think.